Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Mort, and it is Thursday, about 6 a.m., and it's another day. We are approaching the weekend, and I should have a good weekend this weekend. Friday is the Edge of Eternity's pre-release. I'm going to go to that, have some fun. Saturday after stream, my wife and I are going out. I've got family that's going to babysit the kids and the pets so that I can get some good wife time. She's kind of earned it after helping set up last weekend. And then Sunday, I'm going to go see Fantastic Four. So it should be a good weekend. I'm looking forward to it. So just got to get through the week. Right now, what I'm working on, hilariously enough, and this is to kind of share the struggles of somebody like me a little bit, but I'm working on some documentation for the new team I'm on. And one of the biggest challenges for me is that through text, like in person, when I can have a conversation with somebody, I can use nuance in my voice and hand motions and sort of like react to the way they're reacting. So if something's coming across too harsh, I can be like, no, it's not like that. It's like this, and so I can interpret things, and I do really well in voice. It's actually one of the reasons why I like recording videos as opposed to writing documents, is that voice comes with nuance. But in this document, whenever I write text, I tend to come across very bluntly and can be interpreted very negatively. This is just how I write. Like, for example, instead of saying something like, my understanding was, even that can sound harsh in text, but, I write something like, I was led to believe that this, and it's like, well, even saying I was led to believe implies, that I was misled, and which implies a negative connotation, so hilariously enough, what I'm actually working on in this document right now is not necessarily the contents of the document from a design standpoint, but the tone, so that I don't come across as like a giant asshole. So that's just, I don't know. People are weird, and sometimes you have to be careful with those types of interactions, and it can create a stigma around you. I've got a couple stigmas at Riot of like, oh, Mort's that guy that hates process and won't use Jira, So, and a couple others, but, in the sense of improvement, you have to try to make sure, and especially, I'm a guest on this other team. I don't want to come across in a negative way, so that's actually what I'm spending my day doing today, is like making sure the documents I've prepared don't sound like a jerk. But, like I said, it's no big deal. We'll get through it, and then on to the weekend, and it'll be great. It'll be great. All right, questions today. Hopefully not too boring of questions. The first one was the most upvoted question, and I've told this story before, so I'm going to keep it relatively short here. But the question is, how did you meet Mrs. Mort? So, like I said, I've told the story before, but basically, I dated a little bit in high school, had a couple girlfriends, no big deal, but then went to college and was single. While I was in college, DigiPen was a college where, let's be real, it was like 95% male. So you weren't really dating in school. But some of the guys who went to that school, had been dating in their high schools. And in one such case, one of the people that I generally hung around with, sometimes the people you hung around with were the people that got assigned to you as roommates, or other times it was just like the people you happened to run into. But one such person was dating my wife because they were from the same hometown. Like, they went to the same high school together. And she actually moved out here to live with him during, I want to say junior year. So junior year of college, he and now my wife are living together. And the other thing I'll say is that I typically have a bit of a alpha persona in a group of people that I am comfortable with, I can come across as sort of the leader of the group. And it turns out being the leader of the group can make you fairly attractive to people if you do it in a good way, especially because I was also our guild's raid leader and we all played WoW together. But TLDR, so I met her because they were dating, and after a little bit, things weren't going well between them, and they broke up. And then right after they broke up, she confessed her feelings for me. I kind of broke the bro code, and by kinda I mean I broke the bro code, and I started dating her, and definitely created a rift between me and that person. That person is not my biggest fan. He does not like me. So, yeah, definitely not the most romantic story. But what I will say is from there, my wife and I have now been married almost 18 years, and things are great. So it all worked out. It wasn't, 18 years of perfect marriage or anything. There were some ups and downs, especially in the early days, because we're young and stupid. But, overall now things are good. And, yeah, so like I said, it's one of those, I don't think it's a very romantic story, but, I've been married 18 years, and, my wife says that she's not going to remarry. She has no interest in going anywhere. I give her a hard time, and I'm like, well, when I'm gone, make sure the new guy takes care of my game collection. And, she's like, when you're gone, I'm just getting a bunch of cats. So she'll be a crazy cat lady if I pass early. So there you go. Like I said, I've told that story before, but don't want to bore you with too much with this video. But I am lucky that it all worked out, because sometimes if the origins aren't good, the core can be rotten. But in this case, things are good. Things are really good. So there you go. All right, next question. Being a dad in this internet culture, any advice? This is a hard one. Because like I said, I have talked about internet culture a lot, and not just internet culture, but frankly, like the world culture and the way people react and the way people are being raised, and the Andrew Tates of the world versus the like extreme views of the world. One of the guys I went to high school with that I'm now hanging out with again because I'm back in my hometown. His two kids are like 19 and 22. And some of the things that they're going through right now are rough. Just because, again, it's the culture of the world right now. I want to say my sister, who is like 15 years younger than me, my youngest sister, was like the cutoff for where things stopped being super weird. Like she was just getting into that thing, and now it's hard. But going back to your original question, any advice? My biggest advice, first off, do not let your kids on the internet unsupervised until they are about 15 at the earliest. Now, I say unsupervised because, again, they're going to be on the internet. Like, that's just the nature of the beast. But unsupervised is where you start finding the dark corners of the internet that you shouldn't be on. And what that also means is do not get your kid a phone until they are 15. If they need a phone, get them a flip phone. Do not let your kid on the internet before 15. It will do bad things. And what you will find is that random people on the internet are parenting your kids. Not you. You need to be parenting them. Spend those first 15 years teaching them, giving them advice, talking to them about various things. For example here, and this is revealing a little bit more about my politics than I should, but my daughter was watching and hearing all these political stuff, and I pulled her aside and I said, hey, sweetie, here's what's really important. Don't focus on that kind of stuff. Don't get worked up over stuff that you can't control in your life. You'll waste a lot of time and energy if you do. Instead, just focus on making sure you and your loved ones are happy. Don't think about that kind of stuff. To hopefully pull her away from the dark black hole that is politics and political commentary. And that was the advice I gave her, and very upfront to try to make sure she doesn't worry too much about that. And I think it landed well. But yeah, so that's my biggest thing. Try not to be too paranoid or controlling about it either, though, because the more you create it like it's this off-limits thing, this is something that hasn't changed in 50 years. The more you say something is off-limits, the more a kid's going to want to do it, right? So, like, for example, I let my daughter play Diablo 3 when she was like 7. Why? Because she basically played it like dress up, and she went, oh, that's neat. It's a video game. Video games are neat. And then she lost interest. That's it. If I told her she couldn't play it, she would want to play it more. So you can't treat it like it's the boogeyman. So, and that's a weird line to balance, is like, so that's what I'm saying, like, let them use the internet, but like, do it on a computer that's in the family room. That way they can do whatever they want and take an interest when they start using it to play League of Legends or Roblox or whatever they decide to do. Let them use the internet, but talk to them about it and keep it this thing that you can connect with. Don't let them sit in their room all day and doom scroll on TikTok and read Reddit. That's where you get the really bad stuff. So that's kind of my general advice. Otherwise, from there, it's just, that's the biggest thing. It's like, I think, if you go back to like the 70s and 80s, where people thought like TV would ruin kids, and the trick was, well, just don't put a TV in your kid's room, which thankfully wasn't a big deal because it was expensive and people couldn't afford to put TVs in their kids' rooms. But now it's like, yeah. And that's the other thing too, like even something like a TV in your kids' room, don't do it, because they'll have YouTube on it and they don't need to be on YouTube all day, so that's my general advice. Try to keep them off of it, let them use it, don't guide it too much. So, all right, next question. Anonymous suggestions and fan sets. A lot of people have, asked like, why can't we do it? Or maybe there's a workaround where, it can be anonymous or whatever. And this is one of those things that, like, I'll be honest with you, I would love to do, but at the end of the day, I'm still an employee of Riot Games. And we live in a time where people are very legal happy, very willing to try to sue for the silliest things, and I would rather not risk it. We have ideas, but if somebody thinks Riot is stealing their ideas, or one of the ones I actually hate is when like someone posts a good idea on Reddit, like a single good idea, and the comments are immediately filled with hire this man, hire this person, as if, one good idea makes a great employee. Hint, it does not. That's, the perception gets really bad, right? Where it's like, this one person had one idea that was really good, therefore they are better at the job than the people doing the job. And it's like, again, not quite how it works. I'm glad they had a cool idea. It might have been a cool idea that we hadn't thought of. It might have been a cool idea that we already had in production and is like 80% of the way there. It might have been a cool idea that we have even cooler coming. Or it might have been a cool idea that we started and then tech issues blocked it. And it wasn't, like, it's hard to reveal all the behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, it just makes things awkward. Whereas, like, right now, what we basically want is like, hey, here's the design team. It's your guys' job to come up with stuff. Use other games and inspiration and things like that. Oh God, what was the, or like to put this in art terms, like the Bungie thing, right? Where it's like they ended up stealing the art or whatever. And like that ended up being really bad. So all of those things that like you just do not want to have happen. But the truth is, it's fun. What the hell is that? That's just a tree. It's fun though, right? Like I remember the first time we were looking at fan sets before I knew better and wasn't supposed to do it. Like there were some cool fan sets. And you guys have, even the silly ones that like my mods do, they clearly aren't like ship-worthy sets, but they're still funny, right? Like the jokes and the punchlines are great. And going over fake sets is funny. The April Fool's one this year that we tried to make super obvious was April Fool's. Some people still thought wasn't, which is hilarious. But no, at the end of the day, there really isn't a good way to do it. Now, here's the other side of the coin. I remember being, 12 to 16, and, you'll really like a video game, so you start making your own ideas. If you want a little bit of backstory on me, I still have these papers somewhere. When I was, I want to say, somewhere in the 10 to 14 range, I had an idea for Nintendo RPG, because this was basically around the time Chrono Trigger had been out and Mario and the Seven Stars or whatever, the Super Nintendo one had been out. And I was like, I made my whole little like pitch of a Nintendo RPG that used a lot of the Chrono Trigger mechanics with like dual text and triple text. And I always remember it because I find it hilarious nowadays that one of the characters I had as the playable character was Fulgore from Killer Instinct. Because again, Super Nintendo at the time and Nintendo Power was pushing Fulgore a lot, which is hilarious. But I actually still have the papers of me drawing up these ideas because I wanted to design video games and I had ideas, and I even wrote a letter to Nintendo Power being like, hey, I've got this idea, I'd love to share it. And I still have the letter of Nintendo writing back saying, well, we can't take ideas. So like I said, I've been on the other side of the foot, or the coin, other side of the coin. And my advice to you is, if you're somebody who's like this, if you're somebody who's like, I have fun ideas for the games that I really enjoy, don't let the fact that I can't listen to you stop you, right? Because again, 30 years ago, I was making Nintendo RPG in my downstairs bedroom, because I liked video games. And today I'm Mortdog. So, just keep pursuing that and find the right avenue for how to take that creative outlet and how to make your own game, and learn about making games and get input for people. And it's funny because now I can go back and look at that Nintendo RPG stuff and be like, some of it was good, some of it was nonsense. And, that's fun. But it also just builds the muscle. Like, hilariously enough, one of the things in all of my little, like, again, I'm 12 to 14, so this documentation's not great. But, like, I had started listing out all the different enemies and their HP and MP and how much XP you'd get for killing them, because I was emulating a strategy guide, right? Like, at the back of, like, strategy guides, they give you all the stats on all the different enemies. And doing that is a lot of the stuff that helped me become a systems designer to some extent. Understanding how all of these work, how numbers scale in the late game, how damage properties work. So it actually ended up mattering and being helpful, even if I couldn't, share it with Mr. Miyamoto and convince him to make my Nintendo RPG. So yeah, like I said, the TLDR here is, unfortunately, it's never going to happen that I'll be able to talk to fans about their fan ideas. But if you are a fan with a fan idea, don't let that discourage you. Channel that, and you could be the next generation of game designer, and that'd be good. And I'm not just saying that, like, literally that's what it was for me. So, and if this little guy, small town Longview can make it happen, so can you. You can do it. All right. Next one here. What were the lessons learned from the Lissandra encounter where you could buy an artifact anvil for 22 gold? So, we had already learned some of these lessons, but it was nice to get them reiterated, which is that in the late game, offering the decision to use your gold for permanent power is an interesting choice, but a very, very difficult one to balance, because late game gold becomes a lot less valuable, and your position in the game can matter greatly, as well as the potential of the outcomes. Now, that was a lot of buzzwords. What do I mean by that? Basically, we've always thought of the idea of, like, it's a very common idea people think of, right? It's like, late game, let me, buy an extra component for 10 gold. That way, if I have an odd number of components, I don't have to have an odd number of components, which feels super crappy, okay? The challenge is, if you are in a position where your team comp is very strong, so let's say you and I are both playing TFT, and I use my dev hacks, and I have hit all my 2-stars, I'm level 8, everything on my board is 2-stars, I'm in a good spot, 30 gold, okay? You haven't been quite as lucky as the dev, and you have 4 2-star units in your level 8 comp. So you're not quite as lucky, okay? But you also have 30 gold, right? Clearly you're at a disadvantageous position. But maybe because of your augment choices and your positioning, you could at least win a fight. Or you might roll down to 0, hit some of your upgrades, and then be at least on par with me while I'm trying to go 9, right? There's an interesting give and take there, and ways for the player who is behind to try to make a comeback. But if at the same time, at that point, we could spend 20 gold to get a full item, well, all of a sudden, the player who's ahead, me in this example, now I'm up a full item over you. Whereas you needed to use your gold to roll down and hit units. You're never beating me now. Assuming equal skill and things like that, you're never beating me. And now there's just really no way for you to come back, because even if you do roll down and hit all your units, I'm up an item, I'm winning all our fights, and then we're moving into the late game, and you have no way to, there's no choice you can make at this point. And so that has created a situation where there's no more tension, right? Like, before there was at least the tension of, do I go to 9? Do I keep my board strong? I might lose a couple fights on my way to 9. That's really healthy. But if at all times you can convert your gold into power, well, then the answer is always convert your gold into power, and whoever has the most power wins. And so it actually removes a lot of the depth from the game. Now, the Lissandra encounter in particular, that wasn't entirely true because it was so costly. But I think you can probably go back and find a few games where it's like, if the person was in such a good spot they could afford that artifact, they would do it. And they'd be really, really far ahead. Now, the one thing that kind of made it okay is because artifacts were pretty variant, and there were a lot of low rolls that it wouldn't necessarily be like game deciding. But I think now that artifacts have been a little bit better balanced in set 11, pretty much no matter what artifact you roll, there's going to be an output where you're up a pretty large amount. And in some extreme cases, might be just like insanely far ahead, right? Like, if we were talking about KO Coliseum, if you get a sniper's focus in the late game while you're playing Soul Fighter, like, GG, I guess. You know, full items were actually more risky in this regard because full items are like universally always good. To put it in numbers, if a artifact anvil low roll was worth about 10 gold of power, but a high roll was worth about 40 gold of power, well, at least there were low rolls balancing out the risk. But an item anvil, let's say a low roll is 14 gold of power and a high roll is 20 gold of power, well, even the worst case is pretty solid, you know. So overall, what we learned is that it sounds good on paper, but actually disrupts a lot of the other core systems and the tensions within those systems. So if we were ever going to do it again, it would need to be in a very controlled way. But I'm pretty negative on it. I'm pretty negative on the fact that you can, have that sort of power trade-off that's not really the best, I'd say. Now, that being said, this also becomes more true the later in the game you go. Earlier in the game, it's actually totally fine. There's definitely a big trade-off of like, hey, I'm going to, give up econ for an extra component. Econ in the early game is very, very valuable, right? Like that could be giving up a lot of gold. And that's an interesting trade-off. But trying to do it in the late game, there's no trade-off. Gold becomes relatively low value in the late game. So yeah, there you go. All right, I have one more question left. Only a few minutes though. I'll try to make this quick. This is one that one of my longtime mods, one of my OG viewers, Masala, asked. And the question was, if you're trying to get into the industry anymore, is college worth it? So I have a spicy take on this one. Everything I'm about to say is my personal opinion. And if I somehow get in trouble for this personal opinion, sorry. So generally the short answer here is no. I don't think college is worth it. The one thing I will say positive about college is that, let's say you're a small little kid in a hometown in Washington, Longview, there aren't a lot of people who are also into game design and can teach you things, right? But me going to DigiPen, the biggest value it had, because the actual schooling and the things I learned, not really that great for me. Even looking at my career and what I've used, or the people who were teaching me, I don't have a lot of nice things to say. But what I will say is going to DigiPen was definitely worth it for me. First off, because all of a sudden I am with a bunch of people who also want to be in the games industry and who also have a very deep interest in video games. And being around those people made me better, like learning the different perspectives. Some of the people I went to college with, even if I'm not friends with them now, or we had our disagreements or whatever, like their perspectives and their way they think about things widened my ability to how to think about video games. That was very valuable. And working with them directly on our student projects, that was valuable, right? Like having a group of 7 trying to make a Metroidvania co-op in your second year, you learn a lot. And you learn about tactics, and you learn you shouldn't put your name in the credits more than one time because you're a egotistical little punk. That's me. I'm making fun of me because I was an egotistical little punk. And those lessons are good. And those lessons are something that I wouldn't have got trying to do stuff solo by myself. I think that part is valuable in the school. And so if you have a ton of money and can afford it, there's value in that for sure. But from a purely logistical standpoint, college right now is like, what, $100,000 for 4 years if you're lucky? Probably more. So you're looking at student debts for the rest of your life. And your odds of getting in the industry are low to tough, unless you're truly exceptional. They're hard. It's very hard to get in. And then when you do, junior pay, especially for game designers, not that great, right? The peak of game design pays very well, but it takes a long time to get there, and it's going to be hard, right? So like, again, from a purely logical, like, is this a job that you can coast on? Is this a job that's like going to have a healthy work-life balance? No. And so again, would I say, hey, you who I don't know and might be average, should you go $100,000 plus in debt to maybe get a job that, if you're lucky, will pay $100,000 a year if you're lucky? But if you're not lucky, you're going to be jobless and have a degree that doesn't really take you anywhere. Ugh. Again, like, that's just not a safe bet, you know? So, and I'm just being real with you that, like, that is not a safe bet. It was very, very risky for me. And I think even looking at the people I went to school with, a lot of them aren't in the industry anymore, or struggled in the industry, or have, worked at 6 different places since I was there. It's like, not everyone gets the easy path or excels, and it's really tough. But again, don't let me discourage you, because if you truly believe that you're excellent and you've got the 200% drive and you're going to push to be the best, and your wife hears you say, I got to be the best in your sleep, then yeah, it might still be worth it. It might. But man, it's tough. And I don't want to disillusion you into thinking that, like, oh yeah, just get your degree, get a job, no problem, life will be great. It's not that easy. But there are success stories. So yeah, so there you go. All right, hopefully that answered that. 32 minutes in, time to end this. Hopefully you guys are having fun. I beat World 3 on Donkey Kong last night. That was a lot of fun. Game's good, although I have yet to die, and it's not because I'm a god gamer, it's because the game is very, very easy. So that's probably my biggest complaint with it so far. It's not a difficult game. Fun game, not difficult. Cool. Okay, well, hopefully you guys have a good day. PBE is mostly wrapped up at this point. I think they're doing stabilization check-ins, mostly for bug fixes and things like the fact that the Assassinate power-up didn't get turned off and stuff like that. And then Monday a patch and Wednesday live, which will be cool. So not this weekend, but next weekend, I'll do my rank climb on stream. I won't have hyper roll to climb. Oh no. So yeah. All right, that's gonna do it for me. Until next time. Oh, banana. Take it easy.